All right, so I want to share my thoughts, if I may, if it's permitted, if it's still legal, because I live in Canada. So we just have to double check with the authorities if my opinion is approved for public consumption. But if I may share my opinion on what is happening in Canada right now regarding the move of some Eastern Canadian provinces to literally ban entering the forest. To literally ban entering the forest. And not just ban it and lock down all the entries with some police line tape, but put a $25,000 fine, which we found out is actually like more than that. There's an additional victim fee on top of that, just so everybody knows. So it's not just $25,000 fine. Whoever's giving you the fine could also tag on this additional couple $1,000s to spice the deal up a little bit because of victim fees that could be attached to this gargantuan fine that is being levied on Canadian citizens who are already far overburdened by grossly overly abundant taxes and the just inflation that is still kicking around and causing the rising food and housing and gas prices, and to the point where there is no future for a young person in Canada to have a dream of purchasing their first home at a certain age as soon as they get married. That's all over. The economy has been looted blind during the lockdowns, and we're not recovering from that. And the Liberal government policies are absolutely disastrous. And in that economic climate, they want you to worry about the forest fires. And not just worry about the forest fires, because obviously we all want to find a way to solve the problem. I definitely want to point that out, that those of us that are asking these questions that I know are illegal to ask, we're just asking them because we do have some questions. Like, is there other ways of solving the problem with the forest fires other than levying draconian laws and fines and bullshit and saying we're going to lock down the forest and you can't go hiking and swimming in the lakes, you can't go fishing because you might spontaneously combust? Well, we found out the story has changed, so I got to get my jokes right, because the story changes so much as to the reason why we're justifying this. And now we've got the whole public response that is like, yes, we got to solve the problem. The government came up with a solution. Everybody just get on board, man. Why are you questioning authority? Why aren't you just doing as you're told? Well, they sell all your blood plasma to Big Pharma for profit as you donate it willingly to the Red Cross. You have no idea about the business of blood. But anyways, that was another video. People like myself, freedom advocates, what we do as freedom advocates is we always look at all the problems that happen in a society, and we try to figure out, is there a way to deal with this particular problem that they're bringing up to your attention? We got a virus flying around, we got wildfires going out of control, we got lightning striking somewhere it shouldn't be. I don't know. Whatever the problem is, we got, a foreign army invading, whatever. All the issues you can imagine. Is there a way to deal with that issue whilst maintaining our freedoms and civil liberties? Is the only solution available to these politicians, the only solution that anybody can dream up, is it only tyranny that solves it? Only like communism is going to solve it? Giving the government the control of the means of production? Is that the only solution to all the problems? Like, is the only way to solve the economic crisis more government control over the means of production? Is the only way to solve the wildfires to lock down the forests and tell citizens they cannot go in the forests for always changing reasons? Because they've changed the reasons for the forest thing from being, well, you can't go in the woods because you could start fires, right? And then they go, well, no, the New Brunswick one was the first leader to come up and go, well, no, guys, it's actually not, because you're going to spontaneously combust or start a fire. We can't assume everybody's just going to start a fire and throw cigarette butts. She says something to the effect of, that would be ridiculous, or you might be feeling that that's ridiculous, because that's what everybody's feeling. Everybody with brains left, that is feeling that. And then they go, no, it's not because of that. It's because you could go and break your leg. And we've got all the firefighters and the ambulance, and we have to send them all out every time you break your leg. So if they're out there fighting fires and you go out hiking and you break your leg, you selfish little citizen, wanting to go walk in the woods with your dog, what a selfish thing you are. It's about the greater good, guys. Come on. Lock down the forests that your ancestors tread. Since the time of the dawn of humanity, we've been walking in the woods. I've walked in the woods since I could walk, and I have yet to start a fire. I never started a fire. Am I doing something wrong? Am I missing something? So obviously the government saw a lot of people freaking out about this, and they came out and they went, well, no, guys, the reason we're locking down the forests to give you a practice for the climate lockdowns that are coming next, because that all comes from the UN and the top, and nobody pays attention to the white papers they put out every single goddamn day. So they don't read this shit. So they just go, well, whatever the government says, it must be what it is. But you know your government's broke and in debt? Do you know your government's basically, they're not working for the average citizen anymore? They're working for the people that own our debt. They're working for the people that are the ones calling on the red phone that all the politicians have to pick up and answer every time it rings and do as they're told. Anyways, too many segues here. They're now saying, you're going to break your leg, and therefore we can't afford to go and rescue you. But what if I don't want to be rescued? What if I'm willing to take the risk that you guys are busy fighting forest fires, and I realize that we don't have as many firefighters on hand to come and help me with my broken leg? Which, that should be the ambulance guys. Do you have enough ambulance guys? Maybe there's a shortage of medical workers and paramedics in Canada because of some other reasons that we could bring up. That's also another problem that's feeding into this one, by the way. Why aren't we in a better position to be more equipped for these kinds of natural disaster scenarios? Why is our medical system such bullshit here in this country? I thought it was free healthcare. Well, we're getting what you get when things are free. It's crap. That's what. That's just my opinion. But anyways, there's a lot of questions on that front. But even if all of the ambulances and all the police cars and all of the fire trucks need to be front and present to fight the wildfires that may be getting started by lightning strikes, the fact that it's summer, the fact that we've got open grasslands that are super dry and that fire spreads like really, really quickly, maybe the chemical shit, the glyphosate that they've been spraying on all this stuff is very flammable and dries out the forests. Maybe there isn't enough annual burn-offs that help mitigate forest fires. Maybe there is better forest management that we could do preemptively and proactively that would help mitigate the spread of these fires. Maybe we could have maybe the harsh fines and the severe punishments should be reserved for actual arsonists that go out of their way to start fires, like that volunteer firefighter in Saskatchewan that actually went around starting fires, and he actually got charged for it and he admitted to it, and it was a whole thing. And we see these stories going on for years now in Canada, that as every single fire gets started and they go, climate change, raise the taxes, close the gates, tape off the forests, stay in your homes, hide under your beds. We got 10 years before the whole human race melts into peanut butter. While that's going on, they're also reporting arresting arsonists. So maybe there's a bunch of other things that we could do to deal with the fire threat that is getting everybody into mass formation psychosis and not thinking clearly anymore, and going, yeah, we gotta put more draconian tyrannical laws in place to stop your freedom of movement in your own country that you pay a gargantuan amount of taxes for anyways. There could be other ways of dealing with the problem, guys. Just thinking out loud. And guess what? If you use just a little bit of ingenuity and a little bit of creativity, little tiny speckle of intelligence, you might be able to get a couple of those types of people in a room to come up with a solution that simultaneously solves the problem of the threat of whatever it is and keeps freedom intact. So that's what a freedom advocate does, is we look at these things and we go, okay, I want the maximum amount of freedom, and I don't want to tread on other people's freedom, and I don't want to get in the way of solving problems. I am not a selfish asshole. In fact, you're the selfish asshole for saying that I have to give up my rights to your fears. That's selfish. How about that? That's selfish. By saying during COVID, I can't go in a restaurant without a mask on. But the moment I walk in and sit down at the table, I can then take my mask off. But then when I stand up to the height of 5 feet or more, I am now exposed to the virus and am in danger of spreading the virus to everybody else in the restaurant. So I must, the moment I stand, don my face mask, go to the facilities, come back, sit down, and then remove my mask. If you're gonna make that shit mandatory and make my entry into those establishments mandatory with such ridiculous rules, don't make any sense. And you're gonna then take that same type of logic, because it's the same COVID logic that we're seeing with this fire ban thing, which is not logical. It's just, who do you think you are, you selfish serf? For daring to challenge the might and power and wisdom of the crown? Who dost thou believe thou to be? Thou art lowly, thou art crawling on thy belly before the crown. The crown has all of the knowledge at hand, and you do not. You are merely a serf, and you are to know your position, and if you dare rise your head above all the rest to ask questions, you shall be smitten, you shall be fined, you shall be arrested, and you shall be outcast from society. This kind of thinking, it's got to go if you want to be a serious country. Okay? You can't put laws like this in place that prevent you from freely moving around in your own country and expect people not to fight back about it and ask some questions at the very least. And so when I see people reacting to just the asking of questions, I'm not even talking about the government anymore. I expect this lunatic circus act of a government in Canada, I expect them to keep doing lunatic circus act things. That's just comes with the, when you understand what you're dealing with, that's expected. What I don't expect is for the citizens of Canada to happily agree with them on such ridiculous things. That's what I don't expect. I guess I do. I'm saying that a little bit exaggerated because I actually do personally expect this. I didn't expect it to go to the level that it has. I guess I have a little bit too much optimism for the human mind, or the human race. But I'm really hoping that the vast majority of people are not falling for this. Now, the issue in Canada, and the reason why so many people are falling for this, is because the propaganda is very thick. You can't go to the Weather Channel, you can't go to the news, you can't go to a bloody sitcom in this country without or a radio station without hearing about climate change, it's all going to burn, the only solution is more government, the only solution is central control of power, the only solution is more taxes and heavy fines on anybody that is a dissenter of any of these new laws that we're just bringing in now. Anybody that dares say there might possibly be a solution that does not take away their freedom is a Nazi, clearly. So let's just brand them as Nazis and let that wildfire spread all over social media. When I see this kind of chicanery, when I see this stuff, and I see the way the public reacts to it, I know for a hard fact that we are dealing with straight up propaganda. Because it is just, I've studied it in other, we have so many precedents for this. I've spoken to friends from Venezuela who went through the identical process that we are going through right now. And the reason why, here's one thing you're going to say. Well, you're a paranoid nutcase. You guys are just always assuming that, it's going to turn into a big tyranny, and when the government is just trying to protect citizens. But they don't understand the way this type of predator moves. They didn't study it. They don't know how communism works. They don't know how government tyranny works. They don't know what totalism is and how it works. Totalism is just totalitarianism, short form. It's an ideology. It's a package deal. You can call it fascism, collectivism, communism, socialism, any of these things that grant central authority over the society and starts restricting rights and trying to centrally manage the economy. We've got too many case history studies to do to show how this is always a disaster. It has a 100% failure rate in terms of bringing abundance and freedom and whatever we say we want to the public. It just never does, these ideologies. So when you see the signatures, when you see the arguments, when you're seeing the exact framing and slogans, that we're not talking late stage communism, we're not talking late stage fascism, we're talking the early stages. How did it get to the late stage? Well, by the other preceding stages that came before it. Well, then we got to look at those. You don't just look at the late stage and go, well, as long as it's not that, as long as I don't see Gestapo shooting people in the head in the streets, then it must be perfectly fine. That's not the type of logic you need to be using. The way you got to look at this is we're seeing people like myself, us freedom advocates, we're seeing behavioral patterns. We possess this thing called pattern recognition. When you recognize a pattern that's happening, it's like when you're in an abusive relationship and you start asking yourself, wow, I've really noticed a lot of very toxic, negative, controlling, manipulative, and borderline sociopathic tendencies in this person that I'm in a relationship with. I just started noticing that. But then you keep staying with that person. You never address the issue. You never defend yourself. You just go, well, I still love them. Gotta love the good and the bad, right? But then the bad becomes way more than the good. And you keep lying to yourself, like, oh, no, they still love me. They still love me. I'm not ready to break up just yet. And you don't realize the reason why you're fighting for this sociopath that's just manipulating you is because you don't have the self-esteem to know who you are enough to step outside of that, stand up for yourself, defend yourself, and get rid of that person. Because remember, guys, we only defend what we love. We only defend what we love. If you didn't love something, you could go, I don't need that freedom. I didn't need the freedom to walk in the woods. The people saying they don't want to walk in, that you shouldn't be able to walk in the woods, they don't go walk in the woods. They don't value it. These people weigh 400 pounds and they sit at home on social media. These politicians are sedentary. They don't even jog. They're stuck in doing the paperwork all the time. They're not going out in the woods. They don't live amongst the mass. They don't live the lives we live. So to them, it's not valuable. So they're not going to defend that right. Or the right to bodily autonomy. They're like, well, I don't care about my body. I actually hate my body. So take it. Big Pharma, you can have it. Like, just take it. The government, you want my body for experimentation purposes? I'm totally good being a lab monkey, because I don't like my body anyways. I don't have any self-love. So therefore, I'm not going to defend my bodily medical autonomy because I hate myself deep down. So therefore, have at it, because you only defend what you love. If you love security over freedom, you don't love freedom enough. That's why you're giving it up. That's why you're laughing and you're saying, you're spelling freedom with dumb. That it's dumb to like freedom. You see, every time you say freedom to people that are freedom advocates, this is a big thing in Canada. That's like the new thing on social media. You're freedomers. You're so dumb because you love freedom. You didn't love freedom enough. Do you know who else talked about that? About people not loving freedom enough and what happened as a result? Do you know who else spoke about exactly this? Alexander Solzhenitsyn, Gulag Archipelago. I recommend reading it. He said that. He said, in retrospect, all of us look back as we were freezing in the gulags and starving and watching people die. We hated ourselves, he said. If we had just grabbed a bloody fire poker to fight off the guards that came to bring us to the trains to put us in the gulags. If only we had raised a single fingernail to fight back, maybe things could have been different. Maybe millions of people didn't have to get crushed into the earth. And he said the reason it happened was because we didn't love freedom enough. And all those people, when all of Stalingrad was arrested, when all of Stalingrad was swept through with the communist henchmen, black shirts, brown shirts, I don't know what kind of shirt. They came in and they arrested everybody that was dissenting against the government. And they went in Mao's China and the Khmer Rouge and in Nazi Germany, and they got rid of the producers and they got rid of the farmers. And they got rid of the undesirables, whoever was on the list, whoever was the pariah of the day. And the biggest pariah of all was anybody who did love freedom enough. And you had the struggle sessions in Mao's China that every Westerner should be studying, because what you're doing right now on social media, what's happening on social media is this is a digital version of the struggle sessions. So I'm giving you guys some things here that I think are huge. These were huge for me. Takes the edge off a little bit when you understand the psychology behind it. That the reason this is the dividing line in politics, my friends. The dividing line in politics is love. And the people who say the loudest that they love everybody and they love everything, would you be shocked to learn that these are the people that possess no love of any kind? And that's why they need to advertise it? Because people that truly possess love, that frequency of love, from which we get freedom, morals, virtue, love of knowledge, love of wisdom, love of your fellow man, love of yourself, love of nature, love of your family, love of your community, love of your country, love of your freedom, it's love. And you will defend what you love. You will defend what you love. A mother will defend her cub and do inhuman acts of strength and superhuman level things that is believed to be impossible for humans to do. Mothers will do that to defend their young. Why? Because they love them. The mothers that discard their babies like purses and discard their children and don't raise their children and raise them in the state and go work the career and don't raise their children. These are people that don't have that level of love. The people that advocate for freedom, not just for you, not just for me to walk in the woods, but for you to also have the fortune of walking in the woods. You know, we live in a mental health crisis, and all I see is more fentanyl pouring in on the streets and less things that actually help with the mental health crisis. One of those things is walking in nature, by the way. You got all this autism and ADHD and all the DDs all over the bloody place. God knows what's causing it all. It's probably a combination of things. And they say the number one thing you can do with your autistic child or your ADD child, or with people who are recovering from drug addictions, or people that are suicidal and suffering deep depression, the number one thing recommended is, guess what? The thing that is now illegal at threat of gargantuan fines in Eastern Canada. Walking in the woods. Oh, because we got to stop the forest fires. You didn't love freedom enough. Well, you didn't love the woods enough. No, because you're conflating. This is the way they think. They think, these people who don't love freedom enough and are caught in a propaganda cycle that was written by professionals. The thing they're doing, this is why I know it's propaganda, is because of the jump to conclusions, Matt, that they're jumping on in their mind when they're having these discussions. And I've had a few of them with people that I know, and it's shocking. But to be expected. They're conflating your love for preserving nature, for wanting to deal with the threat of these forest fires, but to also love your freedom and deal with both of those issues simultaneously. That's what intelligent people do. They're conflating my questioning of, as a freedom advocate, for what the government is deciding to do as a policy, when I'm saying I simply think there's another way to do it where we don't have to lose our freedoms in the process, and we can still love our freedom, and we can still walk in the woods and have the benefit of mental health. But the fretful, frightened mind doesn't see the world this way. They're reactionary. They react to everything. They don't proact. They don't think ahead. They don't go, wait a minute, let's solve this problem with lots of wins, lots of green check boxes. No, only one green check box. Nuclear option. Shut it down. Everything's illegal now because of danger. There's danger everywhere. The more danger there is, the less freedom there should be. That's their mantra. And the Matrix has you. And the reason the Matrix has you is because you didn't love yourself enough. You didn't love your country enough and the principles upon which it was founded. You didn't love your actual contractual agreement between you and the government that says here and no further. Supposed to be a constitution, but it's not. It's a Charter of Rights in Canada, and we got to deal with that. But anyways, you didn't love that enough. You didn't love the freedoms you were supposedly granted enough. And you didn't love your freedom as just a human being living on this planet, no matter where you're born. You didn't love that freedom enough. And I find it rather selfish of you to be saying that I, and everybody like me, has to capitulate to these mindless twogs in government that haven't a clue about how to solve real problems, and to give up our freedoms in a slow avalanche of things that are all happening simultaneously in many different areas to slowly erode those freedoms that nobody's paying attention to because they're looking at it in one instance of things at a time. They don't look at the whole big picture. They don't go to the 40,000 foot view to see this isn't just this complaint that freedom advocates in Canada have against the federal government of Canada. This complaint is not something that just started because Eastern Canada decided to be a bunch of retards and ban people from walking in nature because of fear. It started decades ago for people like me who have watched a slow boil the frog situation happen. One right after another, one freedom after another, one sane policy that could have led to more abundance for every single Canadian after another. And that starts to add up after a while. And people like Solzhenitsyn and my friends from Venezuela and my friends from China, from Cuba, from Poland, from Romania, who've suffered under totalism before and saw this exact scenario of the slow boiling the frog, the slow march through the institutions, the slow eroding of the social fabric and the customs and the traditions and the rights that were there at the beginning as a primary that everybody used to love and believe in and cherish and go to wars to die to protect. They watched that erode slowly to the point where people forgot that they even had a free country once upon a time worth living in, and they don't know why their country is now just a tyrannical shithole run by a bunch of clowns, and then they wake up and it's too late and they have to flee in the cover of darkness while bullets are whizzing over their head. My own mother-in-law had to literally flee Romania under gunfire from such instances. You should watch her get lit up about this. She'll slap you across the face with a cold shower of reality. But the average Canadian never experienced this. We're a young little baby country here. We didn't experience this shit. But here's the thing, we've had enough immigration to this country from countries that have experienced it. We should listen to them for a change, instead of listening to the Liberal Party of Canada. There's nothing liberal about it. Elbows up, eh? You're in a propaganda cycle built and designed by professionals. Your economy is being looted blind by foreign and globalist interests that don't give a damn about you and your children. And they're training you like pets on their farm. Their pet farm. Their tax farm. To accept more and more draconian laws, more and more centralization of power, less and less freedom and prosperity for the individual, for the family, for the community, for the society. A highly controlled system of government that I promise you, when we get to the end stages of it, because we're not quite there yet, we're walking towards the edge of the cliff. Once there's no ground left to step on and you're off the edge of the cliff, you fall straight down at whatever gravity is, 0.9 seconds or whatever it is, okay? You fall straight down. You actually gain speed as you're falling once you step off the edge of the cliff. That's what happens. We have 100 years of history on this. And you dare tell someone like me that I'm selfish. I'm selfish in a virtuous way. You should actually read the book by Ayn Rand called The Virtue of Selfishness. And I know everybody just, the top of their head just went, what did you just say? The virtue of being a narcissistic asshole? No, that's not, you got to read the book. You got to understand what we're talking about here. It's the philosophy of the airplane. You get on an airplane and you are told, make sure to put your own oxygen mask on before assisting others. Right? Isn't that what they tell you on airplanes? It's a very practical thing, but we could be philosophical about that. That's the virtuous selfishness I'm talking about. Capital S self, that you're not selfish in a way that's trying to put anybody else down. Like, is a mother selfish for defending her young as opposed to all the other people, all the other kids? She's going to have a bias, an inbuilt bias, because that's genetic, that's biology, that's humans. We've survived because mothers and fathers have been equipped with a bias towards their children and their offspring so that they make sure they survive and thrive. And of course, they're going to put them as priority over all others. That's selfish. But it's a virtuous selfish. It's essential for survival. You're just caring for your own survival is selfish. And you know what you find out? You know what you find out when you think this through? Because I know everybody's going to go with the selfish argument. Well, let's do it. Let's do the selfish argument. How much time you got? How far down you want to go? You know what you find out is that your fear of whatever the government's telling you the next boogeyman is, that we have to restrict freedoms in order to fight. It's the only way. There's no other ways. Only this way. Your fear is overriding your logic. And then you are telling people whose logic is not being overridden by their fear that your way of seeing it is the only way. And that you want to feel safe. And you don't feel safe unless everybody's obeying the treehouse rules that were just made up yesterday. And you're going to tell me that's not selfish? In a negative way? Well, you're going to say, well, it's just for my self-preservation. Yeah, but it's misguided. That's what I'm telling you. You're only being given, guys, the illusion of security from the government. It's an illusion. You live on a very volatile and dangerous planet. You are a very paper-thin built being that could have a number of things happen to you that would kill you or maim you or make you sick. At any moment, you could live in the most perfectly controlled society and you can still get hit by a bloody bus. You can still walk off the edge of the wrong cliff and tumble to your demise. You can still trip and break your leg. It's the illusion of security. You're never actually when you're dealing with government, historically and presently, you're never really, like, you got maybe some things they're supposed to be providing security to your borders. And they're supposed to be in the business of providing security for the individual in your society to actually have some rights and freedoms. That's what they're supposed to be guarded. But what you're not getting that deal. They're not telling you that. You're not getting that deal. You're getting the illusion of security. You're not getting real security in exchange for freedom. Even if it was real security in exchange for freedom, I'm the kind of person, I still will take freedom first. But that's just me. I'm a very self-sufficient person. I'm very capable and I'm able. So I can say that. I'm capable of, and if I need support from my fellows, I'll find other people that are also capable and we will work arrangements out so it's win-win for everybody. And we don't need to enslave anybody to our fears in order to survive. When the shit goes down, you're going to see who's going to survive and who isn't. It's the people that have figured this out that are going to survive, and the people that haven't figured it out that unfortunately will not. And if the government keeps going on this track that they're on, that any scholar of studying totalitarianism will be able to see immediately where the end of this track goes. It's too late before you figure out the person propagandized. Before the person stuck in mass formation psychosis. It's too late to change course of that train by the time you figure out that you were getting the illusion of security in exchange for your freedom, and now you are in the work camp. You are scheduled for obsolescence. You are highly restricted and surveilled and monitored. Before you figure that out, and you don't like that, it's too late. The time to get out of the way of that boulder rolling down the mountain towards you, seeking to crush you, is you got to get out of the way ahead of time, before the boulder reaches you. This is how intelligent people see it. So when freedom advocates like myself bring up these questions about what the government is doing to solve these problems, It's also because we're worried that you guys, the people that are eating the propaganda up with a big spoon, are going to enable the government to set precedents that incentivize it to allow or create problems and crises in order to move their goalpost forward to have more power. And their power comes at the expense of you as an individual in your country losing power. Do you realize that? There isn't like this big unlimited power vacuum where it all just goes around equally. So that's the issue at hand here. We have a right to ask these questions. We should be asking these questions. You should be glad someone is asking these questions. And someone is being the watchdog. And the fact that so many of y'all are out there with zero suspicion of what the government is doing is just absolutely mind-blowing to people like me. So we're going to carry on. We're going to keep asking questions. We're going to keep pointing these things out. And we're going to keep fighting for freedom. And stop conflating that as being selfish or nasty or we don't like it or we're Nazis or whatever the hell. I hate Nazis. It's very totalitarian. We just want to solve the problems and keep freedom intact. So, thank you very much for listening. I hope it helped.